Hey guys, this is Mr. V, here to do a book review today for The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. First, before I get into my book review, you guys should know that I do a spoiler-free book review, so occasionally if you see me looking down, I just have a few notes so I don't give any spoilers away. And before getting into the book review about The Count of Monte Cristo, there's a few things you should know about this book. The first thing is that, well, I read the unabridged version, but the unabridged version is a very long version. This book is about, it's depending on which translation you get, it's about 1,300, 1,400 pages. It is a very thick book. I read it on the Kindle, so I can't show you, but it is a very thick book. If you guys go to a bookstore, check it out. So because of that, you just know that you need a lot of patience, and I would say you need basically a plan to stick with it, because it is very long, and I'll go into detail about why you need a plan to stick with it. Another thing you should know is that this book was written in the 1840s. It was 1844 that it was first released. So, but despite that, it does not feel old. That was a concern of mine in the beginning, but it doesn't feel old, but that it is written in like an old style English, but even then, it's still not that difficult to understand what's going on. So let's get into the actual book review for The Count of Monte Cristo. So the basic premise of The Count of Monte Cristo is this guy, Edmond Dantes. He is 19 years old. He's a sailor. He's just happy. He's happy in life. He's going to get a promotion at his job. I think he's become a captain. He's engaged and about to get married. Everything's going well. But there are people who are jealous of him. So because of that, they frame him for a crime. And then he is sentenced to be in prison. And when in prison, he's trying to think through who could have framed him and all of that, and he basically wants to get revenge on those people. And, that's about as far as I can go without getting into major spoilers, because this is a book that is about basically revenge. But while it is about revenge, this book is about so much more than that, because there are so many different plot lines and all of this, because this book takes place over like 20 to 30 years. And that's why I said there are so many interweaving plots, and there are just so many things going on, so I can't get too far in detail without spoiling anything, but there's a lot more than just that. Now, as for the book itself, I actually felt that this was just so well written, because Dumas wrote it well to keep you intrigued, but he also, just did amazing character development. And I feel that is a top thing whenever reading a book, because he did amazing character development to where you really get to know who the characters are. And you get to know they're good, you get to know the bads, you get to know everything about them. So that is great. And, the way in which it was written, and that's why I said it's well written, is that there is a lot of dialogue. He explains the situations, but there's a lot of dialogue between just the characters, and then that kind of shows what the story is like. And I actually felt it was a lot of fun. It felt pretty real, like, in real life, how there's a lot of dialogue, and that's how you find things out, type of thing. Yeah, you have your own thoughts, but then you start to find it out through the dialogue. So, that is, I thought that was very interesting, but you have to write well to be able to do that and keep the person intrigued. Because something you guys should know is that this is a very slow moving, or not very slow moving, but this is a slow moving book. But despite it being slow moving, it is still a lot of fun. But just know that it does take time to develop the story. As I said, this is a very long book, so that's why you have to have a plan to stick with it. But it's a slower moving, but it takes time to develop these situations. It's not like he won't develop something in just one chapter, or he won't develop it, just instantly. It kind of feels like real life, how it's like you don't develop some kind of relationship or some kind of, whether it be good or bad thing, in one day. It takes multiple situations to slowly build up, and he does that. So that's why know that there aren't any like instant situations. And also, I said there's a lot of characters, and he's kind of like following these people's lives. Like that's what you're doing, to where you get to know who the different characters are, and that's why it can be. People consider it slow moving because there are a lot of situations. There's a lot of characters, and by the end of the book, you have gone through so many situations and so many characters. Because again, this takes place over like 20 to 30 years, and as I said, there was no just like instant solution or instant anger type of thing. It was like, they would build up, like someone would do one thing, then another, and then it started to build the tension. And that's why I said it felt like real life. So, that was really good. But I say that, he kept it fun with many interesting situations and, all of that aspect. Some people complained that it was a slower moving book. You may see that online in some other reviews, but I thought he kept the story moving along well, and he did it with fun and interesting situations. So that was really good. And another really cool thing about the book is at some point you basically feel like every single emotion. You feel, like I wrote some down, you feel anger, you feel sadness, you feel wonder, you feel hope and excitement and nervousness, disappointment, pity. You feel so many different things, and you feel emotion for all these characters. It's not just one character that you feel emotion for, that you feel emotion for all these different characters. And what I mean by that is that he did an amazing job of sometimes you would flip on how you feel about a character, where sometimes you'd be rooting for a character. You'd want them to achieve a certain success, but then after the character achieved that success, you would see that they used it their success in a bad way, or that they became kind of mean after they got that success, to where then all of a sudden you got angry at that character and then wish they never achieved that success. So he did a great job with that. Dumas did a great job, and that was throughout the whole book. And there were times where you did not like a character, and then at the end you felt kind of bad at times. So he did a great job of that. And some of the other things, which I found very interesting about the book, as I said, this was written, I think it was written in French initially, but he shows how humans act, and it was written almost 200 years ago. Right now is 2022, and so this was written almost 200 years ago. Yet humans somewhat act the same, because some of the things that they do is they will gossip behind each other. They always want to find out more information about someone else. People like showing off their wealth or the success type of thing. People get jealous and want things that they can't get, especially the jealousy aspect. Like if they see someone else has love or the money or the success, they will get jealous, and then they get angered about it, and then sometimes they will want to make that person's life more miserable, or almost seek revenge on that person just because they have success while one character doesn't, or things like that. And it's that's why he kind of shows how humans act. And one thing I want to make very clear is revenge is not always murder. When I went into this book knowing that it was going to be a book about revenge, I immediately think, oh, is he going to try and kill people or things like that? And it's no, there are many ways that people revenge each other that has no physical aspect to it, where it's they will try and mess up their money, or they'll try and mess up their relationships, or make them go crazy. There's so many different ways that people try to revenge in this book, and there's a lot. And another great thing Dumas does in this book is he not only shows how humans act, but when he's showing how humans act, he poses a lot of philosophical questions, and he doesn't literally write out the philosophical questions, but it makes you take a step back and think from think about certain situations. I wrote some down, some of them he did kind of put in there, but it's is it better to be alone or just dead? At one point when he was in prison, he's debating, he's completely alone, and he's is it better just to be dead then? And he debates that kind of stuff. Or is it better to live with guilt or be dead? And that was another thing he meant, a character meant in the book. They were they felt such guilt. But there was also things like, is it better to have money or be happy or have a great mind? Because there were some of these people in the book that were very wealthy, yet they weren't happy, or there were some that were wealthier but didn't really have the great mind. And, what is the best? Like, some people were looking up to the people with a great mind and not so much to the people with wealth. And sometimes there were the people that looked up to people with wealth and not so much to the great mind. Again, remember, there's many characters in this book, so just understand that. And then, it's like, oh yeah, one of the other aspects is that, like, how people act in such a selfish way. Because I said already, people were getting jealous throughout the book or angered at people that had things that they didn't have, like love or like money, things like that, or success. But that they were so selfish that they would try to seek revenge on those people. And revenge is selfish. But they would try to, like, seek revenge just to make that person's life miserable. And how people would act in a selfish way, how they would act like they were great acquaintances or friends just to get what they wanted. And then after that person couldn't provide it anymore, they just dumped them, and that happens throughout the book. And it happened more than once. And it shows that humans do that. And I would say one of the biggest things in this book is that, and I'd say that one of the biggest things I took away is that just money can't buy everything. Because there were wealthy people in this book that were not happy, and that money cannot buy the respect. You need to get the true respect, and money can't buy everything. It also can't erase the past. If you wrong somebody, you can't just, like, be like, oh, well, the money can erase that. It's like, sometimes a person may forgive you, but it will always be on your mind, So it's like, money can't just erase the past. And, that's a big aspect. And another great about this book is I thought that it had a great ending. It did feel a little rushed, but I still felt it had a great ending because you didn't really have questions at the end of the book. You knew, he covered all the story plots. He kind of covered everything. So that's why I thought that it was a great ending for that aspect. Now, for some of the things that I did not like about the book was that one of the biggest things probably is that I felt the chapters could have been shortened a bit. There were certain chapters that definitely could have been shortened. It's not too bad because he does talk about minor situations or, like, minor talk between characters, and that can be fun. But he definitely could have shortened the book a bit, because there were times where I would just read, like, after reading the chapter, let me make that clear. I read the chapter first, but then I would just go to, like, Spark Notes just to make sure I understood everything. And they would take, like, a super long chapter and be able to condense it into, like, 3 paragraphs. So, there were chapters that instead of being 50 pages, they probably could have made it, or he probably could have made it like 30. So there was many areas where he could have shortened it. And because of that, I think the middle dragged a little bit. And I know that's one area people complained about. A lot of reviews complained about the middle dragging. And some people even quit reading because of it, which is something I do not recommend. Make sure you stick it out. Even if you feel the middle's dragging, make sure you stick it out. But some people did feel it dragged, and I think it was just because he could have shortened it, and that's one of the big aspects that was one of the big complaints I saw. But, and I saw that, but I still thought it wasn't horrible. And the other aspect is that while it had different names, that part wasn't as bad, having, I think it was like French names or, European names that in the United States we're not used to. But that part wasn't as bad. The tough part was that sometimes he would refer to the character in the first name, sometimes as their nickname, and sometimes as the last name. So that was difficult because there were many characters in the book. And that sometimes would be confusing because they would talk about a character, talk about him in his first name. And then the next chapter, they would mention him in his last name. And you'd have to remember that, what his first and last name is. And then there were times where the character would disappear for 100 pages and come back, and it would be like you're trying to remember who is that character, because he would reference it. He would only reference him as the first name so many times. And then when he comes back 100 pages later, he would mention it as the last name, and then you'd be completely confused about who that character was at times. So that was a part that was difficult. And I've seen other reviews online and in the forums. They have also said that they had even printed out a list of characters just to remember who each person was. I didn't print out the list. I did use Spark Notes just to make sure I understood the characters list if I completely forgot it. But I didn't print out the list. I would sometimes just go and check, but I would try to remember who they were, because I didn't want to spoil anything about it, about what was going to happen. So, that was just the only difficult part. But so anyway, I am going to give this book a review, but again, before I give the book a review, please, when you start the book, have a plan to finish it. Go back through my review and you can check, but please have a plan to finish it for how long it is. So anyway, I'm going to give it my official review. I always rate books on a scale of 0 to 10, with a 0 being absolutely awful, a 5 is average, and a 10 is phenomenal. And if it gets a 10, that should be like your next read type of phenomenal. Very, very few books reach it to the 10 category, just as very few would reach it to the 0, because again, 5 is average, and I'm a pretty tough critic. If you look at some of my other reviews, it's hard to move up even 1 point in my rating system, because again, a 5 is average, and I consider a decent amount of books average. So, The Count of Monte Cristo, I would rate this book a 9 out of 10. Which in my rating system is incredibly high. I almost rated it a 9.5, but I put it down to a 9 just because I felt the confusion on the names at times, and I felt he could have shortened certain things, but a 9 out of 10 is phenomenal in my rating system, because I still thought he did a great job with the character development, all these different plots, and he posed he kept you entertained while he slowly built things up. It was still very entertaining. You felt all these different emotions. He just nailed how humans act, and he posed all these philosophical questions, and it's like it really makes you go back and think. And this is a book that you will remember after you read it. And I just thought that this was a phenomenal book, because again, a 9 out of 10 is very difficult to reach in my rating system, because remember, 5 is average, and I'm a tough critic. So I suggest that you guys go out and get and read this book. Don't be intimidated by the length. Don't be intimidated by how long ago it was written, but just get it, start reading it, and I guarantee that you guys will start to like the book, and you guys will get in, like, he will grab you, and you guys will really get into the book. If you guys have any disagreements, any questions, any comments, please comment below. I hope you guys click the subscribe button. But thank you for watching my book review today. This is Mr. V. Go enjoy your reading.